Hello and welcome to my review on the new OGRE You Asshole album called Nature and Computers. OGRE You Asshole is a very weird band. They have now been around for 19 years, and I believe this is their 9th or 10th entry in their discography. There are 4 members. They are named Manabu Deito, who is on vocals and guitar. There is Kei Mabuchi, who is also on guitar. Takashi Shimizu is on bass, and Takashi Katsura is on the drums. So in the past, I would have really considered their entire discography to be more so post-rock and post-punk and kind of just indie rock, psychedelic rock, and things of that nature. So with Nature and Computers, they're actually expanding their whole sound as a whole, which I will be getting into later. So I've always liked this band. I was a huge fan, especially of their 2019 album called Atarashi Hito, but I've always found it hard to actually add them to my playlist just because their music is kind of out there. It has a certain vibe and almost a certain kind of gloominess and melancholy to it that you can't really put on many playlists. Although that's kind of the vibe of the songs themselves are actually fairly lively, or the vocals are very lively and kind of energetic, or they just have a very pleasant sound to them. So that kind of dissonance has always been one of the main attributes of their music. So this album actually deviates from that in that it's now this mix of sort of rock, but also new wave and ambient music and synth pop. And it also is jazzy at times, though I wouldn't necessarily call it that. So at this point, I really don't know what to peg these guys as because they could really fit into all sorts of shapes and holes and everything. So generally, I find this album to be kind of low-key funky and groovy, and I'm kind of having fun listening to it. And I don't know what it is, but I think part of that is also helping me to just kind of relax and just kind of de-stress, and it's just very soothing in a way. I feel that time passes by very quickly, but also very slowly and intentionally when I listen to this album too, which is really interesting. I don't think there's anything else that makes me feel this way. So I'll have the album cover right here. And what I want to talk about is that blob. When I listen to this album, I feel like that blob, where I'm just this gelatinous form that's just kind of bouncing up and down, hanging out, vibing out. That is exactly what I feel like. So I think this album cover is so appropriate and so well done, and I just wanted to kind of shout that out. I have listened to it about 10 or 15 times now, and I found that I really enjoy listening to this album when I have it in the background while I'm doing some other activity. For example, I found myself listening to this album when I'm cleaning or doing the dishes or I'm going on a walk, and I think it would sound really nice just kind of in the background of a party that I could host or something. So if I could get this on vinyl and have that playing in the background, I think that'd be sick. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's fantastic background music, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. There is just something so charming about the sound of this album that I almost want it to be the soundtrack of my life. It is just so weird that I feel that way. So if you've seen my other videos, you know that I love to kind of dissect where inspirations might be coming from for the albums that I review. For this album, I feel like there's a very specific select handful. One I want to start off with is how this album almost has a micro theme of surfer rock. And I think that's most noticeable in the songs Heat Stroke, Fleeting Moments, and Surely There. And it kind of reminds me of the way that Mac DeMarco kind of implements that sound as well. And because OGRE You Asshole also employs a very heavy usage of synths in this album, I find that to be very Mac DeMarco-esque too. For example, I think that song Surely There would fit perfectly on Mac DeMarco's This Old Dog, just absolutely seamlessly, 100%. And similarly, I think they sound a lot like the band Mild High Club on this album as well. The song Mere Curiosity sounds exactly like something that they would have made, I think. And of course, if you like Talking Heads, I think you'd really like this album too. And in particular, I think Brian Eno would really like this album for its more ambient sounds. I think he could really get into it. And finally, there are some of those synth rock sections that are very reminiscent of New Order. So I feel like songs like Outside of the House and Where I Stand are very much New Order-esque if they had more minimal production. So I'd love to go over some of the lyrical content in this album, but I swear to God, I could not keep my focus on the lyrics for any of these songs. I was just always zoned out and relaxed and just kind of vibing that I tried to put pen to paper so many times through so many of my listens of this album. I feel like I got lulled in by this sort of siren song of the album, and I just could not actually be productive in that way while listening to it. It was so strange. So with that said, I don't really have any lyrics to go over for this video. I did try. I really did try. And so all of that plus some of the reverb on some of the vocals as well made it hard to kind of make out exactly what was being said. So for that reason too, I kind of said, I'm just going to focus on the instrumentals here. And with that said too, I think this album would actually work fantastically as an instrumental album. And honestly, that's kind of how I've been treating it already. So in general, I am just really digging this direction that the band is taking. I'd love for them to experiment with these kinds of sounds more. I think it's totally up their alley, and it's a really nice natural progression of their sound over the past 19 years, I think. So yeah, for that reason, I think I would give this album an 8 out of 10. I think it might over time become my favorite album of theirs just because it is so distinctive from the rest of their discography, and the fact that I just really like having it on. I definitely see myself coming back to this album time and time again for the next however long. And I think that's a mark of a really good album. I'm not quite sure what could have improved this album to get a higher score. I think maybe if there was more focus on the lyrics or they were more engaging. But in general, I just felt like the lyrics were more so in service of the instrumentals and the vibe. So I don't think that was really where they were putting most of their attention, which is completely fine, I think. Like I said, this could totally be an instrumental album and I would like it just as much. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I think you should definitely check out this album. And I think if you would like a nice point of comparison, I think you could also check out that 2019 album Atarashi Hito. I love that one too, and I think that is very indicative of their more sort of indie rock sound. And it's just pretty good in general. So thank you very much for watching and have a good rest of your day.